Hi, this is Dave Singh. I'm here at the top of Mount Kosciuszko, just climbed with a bunch of friends, and that's why I'm actually probably dressed a lot more casual than you're used to seeing me. I actually just wanted to shoot a video because I wanted to take advantage of this location and the fact that I made it up here. Not that it's such a strenuous walk, and I didn't really know what to talk about. So we got chatting amongst a couple of friends of mine, and one of my friends works in the hotel industry. And we were talking about how the client's experience in a hotel can sometimes be quite fragmented because different divisions within an organization, specifically that one, don't necessarily communicate with each other. And it got me thinking about this idea of systems integrity. Now, what systems integrity means is that when you have different components to one particular system, if you don't have integrity with them, things start falling apart. And they don't just fall apart for you as a business or as an entrepreneur, but they fall apart for the customer in terms of their experience. Now, this is something that actually transcends business and goes into life in general. I remember a few weeks ago I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who for a really long time was experiencing problems with his body that he needed to go to a lot of physiotherapists for and chiropractors for. And essentially he was jumping back and forth between a bunch of different practitioners to fix some postural issues, to fix some spinal issues. And we got talking about basically how athletes put so much stress on their body and how they actually deal with it, and how that actually differs to the way that the common man, if you will, has to deal with it. And quite simply, we kind of take this for granted, we don't really think about it, but the simplest difference is that if you think of the Australian Open just happened, so you think of a professional tennis player. Professional tennis players put a lot of stress on their body, but it's not like they'll play tennis for a week, they'll do their training and they'll have a comp, and then they'll go on the weekend and get a massage, or they'll go to a physiotherapist. Typically they have a team of holistic professionals that actually work on them. But the other really big difference that people often miss out on is that more often than not, they're not actually going to a physiotherapist and then hopping to a massage therapist and hopping to a chiropractor, then hopping to another PT, and hopping to a bunch of different therapists. They'll usually have a case management principle in practice, which actually brings all of those different components of the system of their care together. So that's a really classic example that came to mind, and it applies so much in terms of small businesses, large organizations, even corporations that I've worked with around the world, to entrepreneurs that are just one-man teams working around the world. Now, you might be wondering, well, how does this apply to a one-man team? Well, it applies because your attitude and your approach to your business can often get quite fragmented, and simply it's because we become overwhelmed and we get to a point where we think, well, let's focus on one aspect of the business at a time. That's all well and good, but if you don't have a principle in place or a protocol in place to make sure that the different elements and components that you're actually focusing on, perhaps at different times, are integrated with each other, then what you end up doing is you end up compromising the experience of your customer or client. And that's going to come and bite you in the ass eventually. And if you're in a large organization, well, it's very easy, especially these days, to say, well, it's actually the governance responsibility, or it's the responsibility of senior managers to make sure that everything's integrated. And quite frankly, a lot of talent these days in large organizations are not as career-minded in terms of being with one particular job or one particular organization for the long term. So they're really looking to get the best out of their job as much as possible, and then make a progression in their career, whether it's in the same organization or not. And in a way you can kind of think that's a little bit selfish, but I don't particularly have the problem with the selfishness aspect of it. What I do think is that it calls upon leadership in organizations to step up and be even more present to this than what I typically notice that they are. And the problem is that when leadership expects that if you have these fundamental protocol systems in place that will kind of do that integration by itself, and they don't actually realize that it's really a function of leadership to make sure that that integration is happening, then teams become very disparate, and you might have a very effective team in and of itself, but essentially you don't have the the parts coming together so that the whole is greater than the sum. And again, that's going to compromise your the quality of your client's experience. It's going to compromise your customer experience. It's going to come back and essentially compromise the fundamental functional and operational and management integrity of your organization. And I would say that as kind of the democratization of media and the democratization and empowerment of consumers in terms of how they can give reviews these days and how they can give feedback to organizations is becoming a lot faster. It actually means that that's not even a long-term problem anymore. It's actually a pretty short-term to medium-term problem. And if you're not dealing with it with that kind of short-term attitude, then all of these cracks will start forming under the surface and you're going to suffer very quickly. So what do you actually do about this? Well, that's a little bit more of a complicated conversation, of course, bringing in external support like myself or other professionals in the industry, whether it's a consultant or a facilitator, just to make sure that that integration in leadership is actually happening is very important. But fundamentally, something that you can do immediately is just ask yourself, really, how are the different components of your systems or your different teams coming together? And are they not? I recently worked with a senior executive team of a very large company, and we went through this facilitation process and realized that just by virtue of doing it, even in an experimental fashion, regardless of what the outcome was, gave such a sentiment of integrity that just wasn't there before. And no matter how small of an organization you think you are or how large of an organization you think you are, this is going to help your business very, very quickly. So I definitely encourage you to think about it. Systems integrity, just think about where you have integrity in your values in your life, where you have integrity in your different practices, and how that translates to different professional areas of your business as well. Bye.